Topping today's news, an update on the Prime Minister at the Summit of the Americas. The Speaker of the House goes off on NEMA, and the murder count continues to climb at record pace. Good evening, folks. I'm Jorino Saunders, and this is your JCN Evening News. Thanks for joining us. Prime Minister Philip Davis attending the 2022 Summit of the Americas, addressing 4 key priorities, including health recovery and resilience, economic growth and prosperity, strong and inclusive democracies, and climate change. In his address, Prime Minister Davis told leaders of the Americas they cannot afford more summits or conferences with only smiles and good intentions. He contends it is time to get to work on combating climate change, building solutions and resources.
We need to get to work. Small as we are, we believe we have an important role to play in building solutions. In fact, in our small island, big ocean state, our seagrasses and mangroves play and will continue to play a critical role in acting as a carbon sink. These blue marine ecosystems can capture up to dozens of times the amount of carbon as tropical rainforests. We need resources to be able to conserve, protect, and restore these blue carbon sinks, just as we need resources to make a transition to renewable energy, and just as we need resources to recover from previous storms and make our country more resilient in the face of future hurricanes.
The Prime Minister further noting that there are estimates that the demand for carbon credits could be worth up to $50 billion in 2030. He contends that all countries are connected and the pandemic, climate change, and disruptions in supply chains come from beyond Bahamian borders, yet the small fishermen and straw vendors pay a big price. With the world trade of carbon credits, Prime Minister Davis hopes the Bahamas will become an agent for change.
Just as pandemic restrictions began to ease, inflationary pressures have affected our recovery. Many of the world's problems end up on our shores, but our shores may also provide some of the solutions for the world. By participating in and benefiting from the trade of carbon credits, the Bahamas will not be standing idly by, merely hoping that the rest of the world does right by us. We are not just advocates for change, we are agents for change.
The Prime Minister also noting because half of the nation's debt is related to hurricanes, the country is without resources to quickly adapt to climate change. However, the government has been making progress in renewable resources and coastal defenses.
We have committed to generating at least 30% of our energy from renewable sources by 2030, and we are willing to increase this ambition. We are improving our coastal defenses through ecosystem-based adaptation practices. A no net loss policy is in effect for our coral reefs, mangroves, and seagrasses, and forest management plans are being created to sustainably manage the forested areas across the Bahamas. We are working with stakeholders to manage our environmental resources and to increase our capacity to manage development projects across our islands. We are transitioning to the government fleet to electric vehicles and retrofitting government buildings with renewable energy components. We are moving ahead with new solar energy projects, including grids for generation and storage capacity on islands where energy infrastructure was badly damaged by Hurricane Dorian.
The Prime Minister proposes that multilateral banks should provide more consistent climate financing at lower rates instead of loans in the aftermath of natural disasters or national disasters. He believes this would help Caribbean nations to make progress with sustainable development and paying off debt. Meantime, the Prime Minister also expressing concerns that during this 2022 Summit of the Americas, Cuba has not been invited. With one of the 4 key priorities discussed at the summit being a strong and inclusive democracy, Prime Minister Davis plans to make an intervention, noting that if the nations are not inclusive and not dialoguing, then there will be tensions which will not augur well for a cohesive hemisphere. As for how the absence of Cuba at the summit is concerns for us here in the Bahamas, Prime Minister Davis said sanctions on Cuba sparks desperations for their residents to leave the island, further noting that this poses an existential threat to the national security of the Bahamas.
You know, we have to appreciate that Cuba is at our doorstep. We have to appreciate that as long as these embargoes and blockades and sanctions exist against Cuba, what it does, it hurts the population. And it increases the misery of those people, hence the desperation to leave. And so we then are faced with the irregular migrants coming from Cuba into the Bahamas, which is an existential threat to our national security. Why? Because there is a very huge, powerful lobby in South Florida in respect to the regime in Cuba.
Add to that, Prime Minister Davis says, as the Bahamas moves to live up to its international obligations of repatriation, those in South Florida do not accept that we have that obligation.
And as you recall, our consulate was stormed several years ago, and so it's a threat to our Bahamians who travel to South Florida, and we do that in droves every year. And so I don't want our citizens to expose to the tensions between the Cuban bloc in South Miami and our obligation to repatriate Cubans who might find themselves in our waters and in our country, and our obligation to repatriate. And so that is a threat that we need to address on an urgent basis.
The 2022 Summit of the Americas is taking place in Los Angeles, California. Debate on the 2022-2023 budget resumed in the House of Assembly on Thursday. Things got off to an emotional start with the Speaker of the House, Patricia DeVoe, expressing her frustration over the alleged inaction of the National Emergency Management Agency, or NEMA, and its director following a severe weather occurrence in the south and southwest areas of New Providence on Wednesday evening. We hear more in this next report. House Speaker Patricia DeVoe, the Member of Parliament for Bamboo Town, vented her frustration and disappointment in regards to the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA, and its director, Captain Stephen Russell, and the role they played following a severe weather occurrence described as tornadic activity in Bamboo Town and other areas in south and southwest New Providence on Wednesday evening. While expressing her displeasure in the perceived lack of action by NEMA, the Speaker also lauded the efforts of a number of agencies and individuals that responded quickly to the emergency, including the Ministry of Works, Donnelly Penn Mackey, Stephen Dean of Rotary, members of the Royal Bahamas Defense Force, and several parliamentarians.
Bamboo Town was severely affected by that tornado yesterday. The area of Seven Hills, where we would have had several homes that were impacted, and one or two senior citizens where they would have lost their roof and the entire inner structure of their home. But what I did not see on the ground was NEMA. And I am saying this because I reached out to Commander Russell, and Commander Russell, I don't know if he was home busy watching the game because I heard he had a game last night, but I could say that he was not there. And that is who we have to reach out for emergency response. And I am terribly, terribly disturbed by that. And I say to him, I told him, I did not lie to him. I told him that I would speak to it from my chair. This is where I have my voice.
Speaker DeVoe explained many residents were left in distress and with major property damage, including senior citizens with live electrical wires hanging onto their property. She stopped short of calling for Captain Russell's firing. She did not mince words and had this direct message for the director of NEMA.
Natural disasters do not happen between 9 and 5. Natural disasters can happen at any time in the death of the night. And so I say this to say, these people, if they want desk job from 9 to 5, give them their desk job. Because I had a natural disaster last night, and the minister and all of these other persons were on the ground until 9 p.m. last night. But sometimes We have persons who are on assignment under our umbrellas that do not have the same vision that we have in place to take this country forward. So I am very disturbed about that. When it comes to Bamboo Town, I don't second guess. And the way those persons had to sleep last night was unbecoming. So you tell Mr. Russell for me, if he is listening, let him say you need a 9-to-5 job. Because I called at 7, 8 o'clock in the night, you telling me Ministry of Works was already on the ground. So the only persons that weren't present was Nemo.
The Member of Parliament for Pinewood and Minister with responsibility for the Disaster Reconstruction Authority, Miles Larota, spoke with Captain Russell, expressing the Speaker's frustrations. He says Captain Russell sought to explain the circumstances and NEMA's actions.
I was advised, and I'm just giving the public the record of what happened, by Commander Russell that the tornadic activity was in the Cowpen Road area, and that's where NEMA had focused, that he was not aware that Bamboo Town had any concerns. That was the message he conveyed to me.
Really?
I would have said to him that in speaking to other members, there were at least 3 communities that was affected. After conveying that message, I would have spoken to the Permanent Secretary, who is acting, Ms. Isla Dean, to convene a meeting sometime today with Commander Russell and the teams from NEMA, and there will be no stones left unturned with regards to the response.
Meanwhile, experts in the field explained to Love 97 the weather system was not a tornado, but a land spout that can also cause severe damages. They further explained that NEMA is not the first agency to call in the event of an emergency caused by adverse weather, and that the Meteorological Department and the Ministry of Works should be contacted for immediate response. However, our experts say it would have been a good show of support for some element of NEMA to be on the ground once notified. Stemming from the Speaker's fiery comments regarding NEMA and its director, Captain Stephen Russell's response to the damaging land spout in South and Southwest New Providence on Wednesday, Deputy Prime Minister Chester Cooper, who is also the acting Prime Minister, promised that the matter will be taken seriously. While he shared the views of the Deputy Prime Minister, there has... Let me start it again.
Let me say on behalf of the Prime Minister, that this matter will receive attention at the highest possible levels.
Thank you, Honourable Member.
Not to belabor the issue, but I want to ensure that the people of the Bahamas understands that our thoughts and prayers are with them, firstly. And secondly, we are a government that cares, and therefore the response will be swift and sure in terms of seeking how the government and all of its agencies might assist.
While he shared the view of DPM Cooper that there needs to be a sense of urgency amidst tragic events, Mr. Pintard explained that NEMA is not a first responder agency and urged the government not to jump to conclusions.
To the best of my recollection, NEMA is a coordinating agency. So I just caution colleagues in all of your considerations that if the relevant agencies that need to render immediate assistance are on site, whether NEMA in the person of Captain Russell appears or not is secondary. What is primary is to make sure those agencies that must touch those persons who are affected, that they show up. But NEMA is a coordinating agency, so in all of your consideration, it would be wonderful that we find out what the facts are. Did they contact those who needed to be there, so that we don't make the presumption that just because there is an event, that there's a dereliction of duty.
Deputy PM Cooper noted the points made by the leader of the opposition and assured the issue would not be personalized. A quadruple shooting here in the capital Wednesday night claimed the life of one man and leaves 3 others in hospital, one of them listed in critical condition. Police Press Liaison Officer Superintendent Audley Peters says the shooting incident unfolded sometime around 10 p.m. on Curtis Street off Finlayson Street in the Baintown area. According to Superintendent Peters, first responding officers on arrival at the scene were directed to the rear of a residence where they found an adult male suffering from gunshot wounds. Police were informed that 4 men were shot about the body. The other 3 were taken to hospital in private vehicles. Emergency medical service technicians who responded assessed the victim still at the scene and found no signs of life. This incident remains under active police investigation. Investments in the development of modern information technology is taking place, according to Minister of National Security Wayne Monroe. During his contribution to the 2022-2023 budget debate on Tuesday, he shared that upcoming investments in his ministry includes $3.4 million allocated for electronic monitoring of convicted individuals. He noted that a shift in vendors is taking place. The move will result in a 12.5% saving for the government, in addition to more reliable surveillance.
More efficient company will allow for better surveillance of offenders who are under police supervision. The benefits will include monitoring and verification of offenders' whereabouts, determining new offending, increasing the likelihood that any violation of the terms of supervision will be detected and sanctions applied.
Minister Monroe informed that $1.93 million is expected to be invested for improvements of the closed circuit or CCTV program, with CCTV cameras to be installed on all public parks in New Providence and Grand Bahama. The announcement comes in the wake of the murder of 13-year-old Quinton McKenzie, who was fatally shot on a public park this past Friday in the Camp Road area.
If these are to be safe places for our children and young people to play, if indeed there was gambling on the basketball court at Uriah McPhee, those persons will know going forward that the police will see it. We do not guarantee that people cannot do foolishness, but one would hope that if they know that they are being seen, that like cockroaches, they will go to the dark and not stay in the light.
Minister Monroe went on to reveal that $946,000 is also being allocated to maintain the Legacy 1 and 2 camera systems in the country. He said public spaces must be protected, and we cannot continue to rely on eyewitnesses that may be afraid to come forward. We'll take a break here, and we'll be right back after these commercials.